The Australians wore brown leather boots, slightly squared at the front, and at the beginning of the war their anklets were made of a woolen material the same as the uniform with buttons down the side, but later on they did have the cotton webbing anklets like the British Army, and they were still using the old SMLE rifles from the First World War. These are original Australian Army jungle boots, slightly different than the British ones. They're a bit more squared on the toes, but they still have the same special cleats as the British ones as well though. The bayonet on this is a 1907 pattern bayonet for the SMLE, but it's slightly shorter than the British ones, the original ones. That was for use out in the jungle. And the tunic, that's another item I bought from a good friend Mike. I bought the tunic and the boots. That's what the tunic is very similar to what they wore in the First World War. Later on they would use the battle dress blouse. Then the 37 pattern webbing equipment, they would quite often use Indian made. Most of this set is Indian made equipment. It's a bit of a coarser material than the British and made ones, not quite as well made, but it did the job anyway. And it'd have brass badges on the collar and the shoulders. And then we've got the slouch hat. That was always buttoned up on the left hand side. That should have a brass badge on the side there, but at the time of filming I can't find it. These are the special bayonets used by the Australians and the Indian Army. It's shorter than the old 7 pattern British one, but it's been specially made. It's not just been cut down, it's a specially made bayonet. And it's got markings there, a few at the back there. And also all British and Commonwealth troops will have a mess tin. That's its special canvas case. Comes in 2 halves. Got a handle there. They've both got handles on. It's a matching set. They're both dated 1945. All British and Commonwealth troops would have those. And you do quite often see soldiers carrying those in a spare, instead of in the pack, they would have a spare carrier, water bottle carrier, and carry them in just outside like that, in a water bottle carrier. A lot of the Indian webbing was made by the Beta company. This one's dated 1943. As I said, the Australians were using a mixture of Indian and Australian made webbing equipment. The backpack on this one, that's Indian made, and then the entrenching tool case, that's Australian made. You can see there the difference in the quality. And then the water canteen carrier, at the beginning of the war the Australians were slightly different. They had that broader band around the water canteen. I don't think that went on long. You don't see that in photographs very often. Just a quick correction, I said the metal badges were made of brass. I think they're made of bronze. And you shouldn't really talk about the Australians without the New Zealand soldiers as well. Together they were known as the Anzacs. But I haven't got any New Zealand uniforms at all, so I can't show any of that. Now the Australians, they were renowned for being really tough fighters, and they were crucial in the defence of Tobruk. In the siege of Tobruk, that lasted from February to October in 1941, and then again at the Battle of El Alamein in 1942, and also out in the Far East fighting the Japanese in New Guinea and all the islands there. Now I'm not sure, but I've never heard of much about them Australians in Europe during the Second World War. I'm not sure whether they were just all kept back for the Far East because they're frightened of being invaded by the Japanese. But there's another YouTuber called Cody and Steve Down Under, my chum. I'm sure he'll let me know in the comments if, if that's the case. Were they just held back because they were, they needed them for the defence of Australia from the Japanese? Out in the Far East, the uniforms used to rot really quickly, and the slouch hats, they were very expensive to make, so they were replaced at times with this a jungle beret. These men are wearing the jungle beret, and the man at the front, he's carrying an Owen submachine gun. That's an Australian-made machine gun. This is the Owen submachine gun. It was first developed by a chap called Evelyn Owen and came into service with the Australians in 1942 and right up to 1971, and was used by them in both Korea and Vietnam. And it's proved to be a lot more it looks very much similar to this Sten gun, but it was a lot more reliable and not as prone to getting clogged up with dirt. At the time of the Second World War, the British dispatch riders wore these special tall boots with 3 straps at the top. Then they would wear special breeches as well, unlike the infantry. They did make these boots after the Second World War as well, but the way to tell, on the right foot there's a metal plate there that's screwed to just in front of the heel. That's to stop the boot getting warm when they were kick-starting the motorbike. So if it doesn't have that plate on, or the holes where it's been, they're not Second World War, they're post-war. The dispatch riders were issued with waterproof trousers with braces, but these are far too small. I've just tried to get them on the mannequin, but they just won't go on. There's a date there of 1941, but they're a full length thing. That goes off. That strap was under the feet, and then there was a label inside, but that's falling off. That's the maker's name there and the size that it is. On top they would wear the battle dress blouse like everybody else, and then the leather jerkin. This came out in the First World War. They would also have special leather gloves, and then a blue and white armband just to show that they were dispatch riders. And then the helmet shell is the same as they use for the paratroopers and the tank drivers. Same shell but different liner and chin strap, and then goggles as well. The leather jerkin just has a woolen blanket lining, just like the battle dress uniform, and this one's dated 1944, size number 2. These are the leather gloves with the markings inside, dated 1941. Back in the old days, messages would be sent by horse. But then by 1914, at the start of the First World War, battalions of the Cycling Corps were set up. Their main job was reconnaissance and sending messages back and to. And also in the First World War, out in Egypt, they would sometimes use camels. And by the Second World War, it was known as the Royal Corps of Signals. And at the start of the Second War, they were sending important messages back from listening stations back to Bletchley Park, but that was later done by teleprinter. And the main bikes that they used at the time were the Triumph, Norton, BSA, the Matchless and the Ariel.